Today we are starting a new lesson. In the previous class, we completed the geography lesson. I hope that you have all studied that lesson. You complete that notes and write all the question and answers and send to me. I have already told you, but only one notebook I got it for correction. And remaining notes also you have to send to my WhatsApp number as early as possible. Okay? Today we are starting the first history lesson. That is French Revolution. History of French Revolution we are discussing today. That is fully different from geography. As you know that geography, simple points are enough to get mark. That means if you read that class, or if you read that point what we have mentioned, what we discussed in the class, you can write the question and answers. But history, it is very important to get the details of or a particular topic what we are discussing. That's why you have to listen very carefully and read the textbook along with that and get the point. Can we start the lesson? French Revolution, the history of French Revolution. As I told you in the very beginning, in history we are discussing about the European history. Okay, one lesson already we completed. Now it is the first lesson we are starting, the French Revolution. Have you heard about French Revolution? And you have already studied about agricultural revolution or green revolution in the previous class. Here comes a question. What does the word revolution mean? The revolution mean, my dear children, it's a great change. A dramatic change is referred as revolution. Here, agricultural or industrial or what green revolution means? Revolution or change or development in the field of agriculture. That is termed as green revolution, what you have learned in that 8th standard. Now this is French Revolution. That means as a result of this revolution, lots of changes were made in the history of France. What were the changes that we are discussing? And what were the causes of this revolution that we are discussing? It's very interesting topic. If you listen the points carefully, and it is very easy to learn the chapter. Okay, are you ready? We can go for the next part. Okay? Yes, we can start. Dear children, history of French Revolution. Okay? And in this lesson, my dear children, we are discussing 3 important points or 3 important subtopics. The first part we are discussing about the causes of French Revolution. And what are the causes or reasons of French Revolution? Second part we are discussing about cause of French Revolution. What happened or what were the main incidents happened during this period that we are discussing in the second part. And last part we are discussing about the results of French Revolution. That means what happened in France after Revolution. These 3 important factors we are discussing in this lesson. Got it? The first one, causes of revolution, cause of revolution and results of revolution. Okay? And first we are discussing causes of revolution. My dear children, French Revolution is a revolution organized by the common people of France. These common people of France organized a movement against the rulers of France. Why? That we are discussing. Okay, common people organized a revolution against rulers. Here comes a question. Who were the rulers of France during this period? Okay, the French Revolution broke out in 1789. 1789. It was a movement organized by the common people against rulers. That means during this period, France was ruled by Bourbon family of kings. Okay, the important Bourbon ruler was Louis XVI. Have you heard about Louis? Okay, Louis XVI was the ruler of France during the revolution. He ascended the throne in 1774. In 1774, Louis XVI came into power in France During this period, common people started a movement, a rebellion against the monarchs, that means against the Louis. That was known as Great French Revolution. Why? Because common people were not happy with the administration of Louis. What were the problems we are discussing? What were the problems of this revolution? What we are discussing? Why did common people attack the Louis or attack the monarchs or rulers? That we are discussing. The causes of this revolution for convenience of study. There were no classification like that in the textbook. But for convenience of our study, that as we are moving on to these online classes, I am categorizing this point into different factors. The first we are discussing political causes. The next economical causes, social reasons, philosophical reasons, etc. It is for convenience of our studies. First we are discussing about political causes of French Revolution. What were the political features of, administrative condition of France during this revolution? Okay, administrative reasons. Okay, my dear children, the first political causes of French Revolution. As I have told you, the France was ruled by Louis XVI. He belonged to Bourbon family. When he ascended the throne in 1774, he was only 20 years of age. He was only 20 years of age when he ascended the throne. That means, and he was not able to control the vast areas of France. He was inefficient to control the vast areas of France. Okay, and he married Austrian princess Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette was able. That's why she controlled the administrative functions of France. Okay, and the ruler Louis XVI was inefficient, and at the same time Marie Antoinette, his wife, was efficient. That's why she controlled the administration of France. She utilized the treasury, that means money, for her needs. This created the problems. Okay, understood? And besides that, French rulers, that means Louis, were autocratic. They believed in divine right theory. Divine right theory means they believed that the power of administration was given by God. That's why they believed that the ruler was only answerable to the God. Okay, that's why he didn't take any measures to increase the welfare of the people. Okay, he spent a large amount of money for his own personal affairs. And Marie Antoinette also spent money for her own personal affairs. This created the problems. Is it clear? Political causes, they were autocratic rulers, they were inefficient. Marie Antoinette interfered in the matters of administration. This created the political problems, and all the people, especially common people, were against rulers. That were the political causes. Understood? My dear children, next we can start. Explain the next cause, economical causes. Already we discussed that under the Louis administration, the people were not happy because they were inefficient to control or administer the vast area of France. And what happened? During this period, as I told you, the rulers Louis XVI spent a large amount of money for his personal affairs. Besides that, he spent a large amount of money for maintaining large court. Their palace is known as Versailles Palace. He spent a large amount of money for decorating Versailles Palace. Already treasury was empty, and he spent a large amount of money for this maintaining the court, large palace Versailles. That's why what he did, and he created other policies. In the same context, what he did, and he spent money, or he decided to help 13 American colonies against Britain. That means My dear children, listen very carefully. During this period, there was a revolution in America. Americans who fought against Britain. America was divided into 13 colonies before the establishment of, before the formation of USA. And it was divided into 13 colonies. These colonies were under the control of Britain. And during this period, in 1775, and American colonies fought against Britain. And then, in this context, America asked financial help from France. And what he did, Louis XVI, Britain was the common enemy of France. That's why he promised his financial help to American colonies. That means Louis XVI decided to help American colonies against Britain. Nothing is to mention more, my dear children. This worsened the economical problems. Already there were some problems. The treasury was empty. In this context, he decided to give money for 13 American colonies. In order to meet this expense, what he did? He borrowed the money from the money lenders. Okay, when economy was in crisis, these money lenders increased the taxes. Increased the interest rate on loans. This again made problems. Okay, large amount of money was spent for giving as interest. Okay, in order to overcome these problems, Louis XVI decided to increase taxes. Taxes were increased. That means, as per the system of France, taxes were imposed on common people. That we can discuss in the next part. Common people. But they had no money. The common people were forced to give taxes to the government, but they had no money. That's why they were all against rulers. You understood? As I told that, it was a movement started by the common people against rulers. In this context, when Louis XVI decided to increase taxes, common people were not happy. Okay, they had some problem because they had no money. Tax burden was imposed on the common people. They were all moved against Louis XVI. That was an economical reason. Is it okay? Economical reason. And he spent money for different purposes. And he borrowed the money from the money lenders. This worsened the condition of common people because the government imposed taxes on common people. That's why they were against rulers. Is it clear? Okay. Next is economical reason we explained. Next is social reasons. My dear children, you should read the textbook and make it clear each and every point. Okay? And social reasons of French Revolution. In this aspect, we are discussing the society of France. What was the structure of French society? Was there any problems that we are discussing? And then French society was divided into 3 estates. You should keep that point in your mind, estates, 3 divisions which were known as estate. French society was divided into 3 estates. First estates were, topmost division was clergies. Clergies, that means those who are doing the religious or church activities, working in the church activities are clergies, clergy. And second estates were nobles. Clear? There were 3 estates. First estate comprising clergies, second estate comprising nobles, and third estates were common people. Clear? It comprises a vast areas of or population of France. Merchants, artisans, and agricultural workers or peasants, and all the lower or common sections of the societies were in the third estates. Don't forget, French society was divided into 3 estates. First estates were clergies, second estates were nobles, and third estates were common people. And what was the problem? First and second estates, that means clergies and nobles, had voice, had some privileges, had voice in the administration. They were very close to that rulers or monarchs, Louis. Okay, and these people, these 2 estates, first and second estates, enjoyed some privileges. They decided everything. They were very close to that rulers. They decided all the administrative activities. But third estates, common people, had no voice in the administration. Okay, they were considered as the lowest or inferior sections in the society. They had no voice. But at the same time, 90% of the population comprising these common people. Large part of this percentage of the population comprising third estates, and 60% of the land was owned by the first two estates. That means their condition was, common section third estate condition was very pathetic, and they had no land. They worked as servants in that first two categories. But one thing you remember, and they were forced to pay taxes. Tax burden was imposed on common people. But they had no money to give. They had no land. This created the problem. When Louis XVI decided to increase taxes, and this burden was imposed on the common people, they were against the rulers. You understood what I am telling? Okay, and the people had no money to pay taxes. These large sections of common people were against the rulers. That is the social reasons of France. That means if any question comes, you have to write that estate system of France. Common people were all against the rulers. They started a movement against monarchs. That is the social reasons. Okay? My dear children, next we are discussing about the taxation system. That is another important reason behind French Revolution. Already we have mentioned tax burden was imposed on common people. And then in France, common people were forced to pay different types of taxes. The first important taxes imposed on the common people was tithe. Tithe was a tax imposed by church. Christian church imposed a taxes on common people, that was tithes. Besides that, the monarchs or rulers of France, Louis, imposed some taxes on common people. That was known as tally. Tally was another type of tax imposed by the common people, on the common people, imposed by government, the rulers. Besides these two important tax, tithe and tally, common people were also forced to pay the taxes on everyday articles such as salt, tobacco, etc. That means there were some taxes were imposed on the common people. They were forced to pay these taxes like indirect taxes on everyday articles, tithe, tally, etc. But at the same time, you remember, first two estates were exempted from paying taxes. They were exempted from paying taxes, but tax burden imposed only on common people. This made the problems for the common people. You just think what was the condition of common people during the revolution or before the revolution. That's were all against, common people were all against the rulers. Okay, that is the next point. And one more point we are discussing. And during this period, the population of France was increased. Population of France was increased, but at the same time, the production was less. Okay, production was less, population increased. That's why the price for the food grains was also increased. Common people had no money. 90% of the population were common people or third estates. They had no money even for buying their and satisfying their basic needs. This resulted a very difficult situation in France, economic situation in France, that was known as subsistence crisis. Subsistence crisis was created in France. This also resulted the problems for the life of the very common people. That's why they also moved against rulers. Okay? Then one more thing that we can discuss next. Okay, the last point, last important, very important reason. Already we discussed that common people were dissatisfied. And rulers, along with that clergies and nobles, made lots of policies and imposed on the common people. This worried the common people. In this context, and common people were ready, they decided to move against rulers. In this context, they got some help from great French philosophers. They got some moral support from great French philosophers. That means the great ideologies of French philosophers inspired the people, inspired the common people. And who were these French philosophers? who inspired who motivated the common people, and who morally supported the common people to move against rulers. The first important philosopher was John Locke. John Locke was very greatest philosopher. In his book, Two Treatises of Government, he criticized the divine right theory of French rulers, and he motivated the people to move against rulers. Okay, and in his book, Two Treatises of Government, he promised the people to move against rulers. He was against an autocracy. He was against a divine right theory of rulers. Another important ruler, you have already heard about this great writer of great philosopher of France. He was Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Rousseau presented his very famous theory. In this theory, he believed that government of a country was a contract. The administration of a country was a contract between the government and the people. And he believed that government always answerable to the people. And then he also criticized the French rulers in his book Social Contract. Rousseau in his book Social Contract proposed a theory in which the government must be based on a contract between government and the people. This also motivated, this great theory motivated the people. The people started thinking about their administrative policies of France. That is the second. And third one is Montesquieu. Montesquieu in his Spirit of Laws, in his book The Spirit of Laws, he proposed great ideologies of France. That was, the government was, or administration was divided into three organs. That is, you already learnt, executive, judiciary, and legislature. What we borrowed, we the Indians borrowed from these great ideologies of division of power from this great philosopher of France, Montesquieu. Montesquieu's the division of power was also inspired and motivated the people. They all decided to common people with the help of these philosophers. They moved against the rulers. This movement was known as Great French Revolution. And what did they do? That we can discuss in the next class or in next topic. And let us summarize this point. And again I am telling, you have to listen the class, and I am giving that as important question answers to you. Listen that, and along with that you read the textbook and make clear answers and write in your notebook and study in your notebook. Okay, study these question and answers. Okay, we can let us summarize these points. Thank you.
First question, when was French Revolution broke out? Answer, 1789, July 14. Second question, who was the ruler of France during Revolution? When did he ascend the throne? The ruler of France during Revolution was Louis XVI. He ascended the throne in 1774. Third question, what was meant by the term old regime? The term old regime is usually used to describe the society and institution of France before 1789. Next question, describe the circumstances leading to the outbreak of revolutionary protest in France. That means, what were the causes of French Revolution? The first, political causes. First point, in 1774, Louis XVI of the Bourbon family ascended the throne. Second point, the rulers were autocratic. They believed in divine right theory. Third point, defective administration. Fourth, inefficiency of the rulers. Next, economical causes. First point, long years of war and the cost of maintaining large court had drained the financial resources of France. Second point, they financially helped American colonies against Britain. This increased economic crisis. Third point, in order to meet this expense, they borrowed the money from moneylenders. They increased interest rate. Fourth point, French government was forced to increase the taxes. Fifth, this made a tax burden on the common people. They were against monarchs. Next point, Society of France. First point, the French society was divided into three estates. The first estates were clergies. Nobles were the second estate. Third estate comprising merchants, peasants, artisans and common sections of the society. Last point, the first two estates enjoyed some privileges by birth. They had voice in the administration and were very close to the monarchs. 90% of the population comprising third estates, but 60% of land was owned by first and second estates. Taxes were imposed only on third estate. Next point, taxation system. The third estates were forced to pay taxes. The church extracted taxes from the people, which was known as tithes. The monarch or state imposed taxes known as tally. Besides, a number of indirect taxes which were levied on articles such as salt, tobacco, etc. Next point, subsistence crisis. The population of France was increased during this period. This led to a rapid increase in the demand for food grains, but production was less. So, the price of food grains were increased. This led to a subsistence crisis. It was an extreme situation where the basic means of livelihood are endangered. And is philosophical reasons. The great French philosophers promised their support to the common people against rulers. John Locke, in his book Two Treatises of Government, criticized the doctrine of divine right theory of the monarch. He also put forward a form of government based on a social contract between people and their representative in his book The Social Contract. In his book The Spirit of Laws, Montesquieu proposed a division of power within the government between legislative, executive and the judiciary.